This is Vince at Practical Performance with the second episode of the front gussets for E46 convertible design. So the second design video. And I've been doing some measuring and testing here and realized that I will most likely have to drop the idea of having this piece just folded out. Even though it works out with the drilling and all that, and I wanted to keep it in order to not have to have too many joints and such. I did realize that when I was testing this out, and as I also suspected, having seen the so this is pretty deep down, and because of the slanted piece here, it's narrow. It's not as wide as the actual tube that goes in. So I've drilled 51, that's 2 millimeters, and the tube I'm using is 48. This is, speaking of which, how I do the bottom parts of the gusset cup. So that there's a recess there, just above that number 2 there. You can probably make it out there in those tabs. So the 2 millimeter walls, 2 millimeter flat sheet metal bottom. So it's sunk in 1 millimeter. So it's sticking out 1 millimeter, and it gives me some space to weld. And it also allows some penetration, and it steers sort of, it's guided into place very nicely. So at this point, it's not welded, obviously. I've just sort of stuck it in there. And it's not the correct length, and it's not cut at a slant either. But I did make a mark there. That's the approximate height that's needed. And the idea was that once I've cut this, I would fold it in, essentially. And then on this piece here, with the slanted cut that would correspond to this, I'm going to be putting a face plate. And the idea was to stick it in, so this is now representing that if it would be folded in. I don't want to fold it back and forth to cause metal fatigue in case I'm keeping it. So anyway, if I were to stick this in now, and we see that mark there, it needs to go in pretty high, and then it won't come around. It will actually get stuck right there. It will not allow me to put it in at an angle. And there goes my light. Okay, so I think we can do the rest without the light. So what needs to happen is it needs to come in from the top. And that will actually obviously not be a problem at all. But having the face plate and doing that, I would not be able to fold this in. So this will have to come off, and I've started to figure out another solution for getting it back in a smooth manner. For the welding version, it won't probably not be difficult at all. You just weld this back and you weld the other stuff in. It's a little bit trickier to get the epoxy rivet version working. So my next step is to flatten the ridge I've been talking about before, the one on the very front bottom there. I'm sorry about the light. Let's see if it just works for a little bit. There you go. So you can see, just barely see the ridge there in the front. See if I can make it focus. There you go. And I'm gonna flatten down those MIG welds so I can get this to seat correctly, sit square. What I'll also do is I'm gotten myself some measuring devices. I'm going to be measuring the angles and whatnot. And I also got this little device there, digital angle, I don't know, meter or whatever you call that. Because what I want to figure out is this angle here, and more importantly, this angle relative to the bottom surface angle. So that's what I'm gonna be figuring out, and probably take those dimensions, those measurements to my computer and start drawing something. Using this punch here and my sledgehammer. Well, it might seem violent to have a sledgehammer, but the added mass relative to an ordinary hammer will give you more inertia, and you will not have to use as much force. So anyway, I used the punch. Once again, I'm going to see if I can get some focus down there, and I punched down the ridge here. What I also did is this surface here, this skin, it had kind of folded inwards down here. So what I did is I used, so I put this as a lever, and then I used a large screwdriver like this, and then I put it against the edge down there, and then I just pried it over the lever there, pulling, see here, pulling this surface here. Let's see, this surface right there, pulled it out, and then I could punch down that ridge with a number of punches. So it's a little bit low now, but I'm concerned about high spots, not low spots. So if you have a high spot, it's going to start, it's going to be sitting there wiggling. A low spot is not a big issue, and therefore I also did, while using my Dremel, I probably took out a little bit excessive, an excessive amount. I can feel that it's a little bit of a low spot there, but again, that's not an issue. We will be filling that up with the epoxy, and the important part is that we have an adequately large flat surface. Okay, so I now went ahead and with my correct size hole, I fitted this. I'm gonna move that light out of the way. And I made sure that I found a spot where it's, you know what, it's a little bit tricky doing this with one hand, but where it's standing, it's sitting flush, it's sitting straight. Although when I had a look inside, you can see that the hole is now offset. So it needs to come over sort of like that, so somewhat. There you go, somewhere like that. But now it's touching this edge over here, and it's not sitting flush on the floor, so to say. So what's happened is that while I was drilling or cutting, I probably had the hole saw tipped over a little bit too much this way here. So it needed to be over that way. Because as you can see, the width, there's no problem with the width of the hole, it's just moved over this way too far. So that's something I have to take into consideration with the instructions doing the installation. Maybe I need some more guidance, I'm not sure. Maybe it was just because I was pushing it that way. Anyway, at this point I need to take some more material out of this corner here, if you want. I'm gonna start by trying to use this and just sort of cutting on the edge there. It's probably not gonna work out too well, I'm not sure. If that doesn't work, I'm gonna go to a half round file. And if that doesn't work, maybe the angle grinder. Yes, now that I have tapped the hole, I have I've screwed down a one of the extended studs upside down, so this is what's normally down. The thread is all the way through. I have locked it on the other underside with a nut. So this is now solid. It's as straight as it can possibly get in that hole. Now that I measured the distance from here to the center, that's 22 millimeters. And from the corresponding side to the center is 29. So that's a difference of 7, and half of that is 3.5. So the center of my drilled hole is 3.5 millimeters off. Now, you know, let's see, how should I express that? So when drilling for the standard gusset cup in this surface only, that's not a big issue. It's not a big deal if it gets a little bit, you know, at an angle, because the hole is 51, the steel tube and the gusset cup is 48, so there's a little bit of wiggle room. And most importantly, you know, so this edge here, the corner, is a lot higher than the highest point there, and it's also a lot further out. It's actually at the center pretty much. So the difference is going to be huge in terms of how much wiggle room is needed, and how, you know, how how much slanted that hole can be really. So I need to go off and design a better guide, longer guide rods, and something at the bottom that will, you know, hold it completely aligned with the hole, essentially. So as a matter of fact, I do have the longer guide rods already. I was kind of anticipating this, but hoping it would not be necessary. That's why I tested it. So these are about 100 millimeters longer than the standard one. So it's going to reach down through all of this, even though we start up at that level here. It's a good thing that we opened this up like that, because when I have a look at this, you can clearly see that, let's see, we're kind of already inside of there. So that gives us just enough clearance to go down through the hole and sort of wiggle it over inside there, I hope. We'll see if that works out. Otherwise, the slanted cut will need to come even higher. So at this point, I'm gonna go off and do some, you know, drawings, and I will see if I can get a shop to create what I have in my mind right now in terms of the guiding thing on the underside, and then I'll probably try and use that and see if I can drill out the you know, the additional clearance that's needed there. Maybe that shows even from the top. It does, I think. Yeah, you can see how the hole is further to the left than to the right. So there you go. That's development for you.